Today, we're going to talk about the top 3 mistakes that dads make in child custody. Now, yesterday we talked about moms. And so obviously I don't want the moms to feel solely called out. There are things that recur on both sides. But today I'm going to focus on the things that I see repeat with my dad clients that are kind of the common mistakes that they make when they're going through their custody journey. So before we dive into this, let me just remind you, if you like the content and find it helpful, don't forget to hit like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And if you know another dad that is struggling with this same process like you are, feel free to share this video with him because we want to avoid these mistakes. The first thing that a new dad client will say to me, I just want what's fair. Okay, fair is a 4-letter word in court. I hate to say it, but it is. And it's sad because we think of the court as the justice system, right? So we want what's just. We want what's fair. And that's our perspective on it. But in family court, when you're dealing with child custody, fairness is not the call of action for the court. Fairness suggests between two people, right? So you're saying between me and mom, I just want what's fair. I want us both to have what's fair for us. Here's the problem with that argument. The court's focus is not on you, mom, or the fairness. The court's focus is on the children. So as soon as the word fair or equal or any of those things leave your mouth, what you're saying to the court, whether you realize it or not, or what I should say is the way the court's interpreting what you're saying, whether this is what you intend to mean or not, is that your focus is on you and what's fair to you and the other parent. Okay. And, frequently we say things and intend them in a certain way, and they're not interpreted that way by the other person. That's why we have arguments in our relationships, because we have breakdowns around what the meaning of things is. And so it's real important for you to understand when you're in front of that judge and you're saying certain things, you're conveying underlying messages that you may not be intending to convey because of the way that they're interpreting it. And fairness is just one of those words. The way the court tends to look at this issue is what parenting schedule, not percentage of time, not equal, not fair, what parenting schedule is in your child's best interest and why. And so I have other videos where I talk about common parenting schedules. There's everything from every other weekend and a weekday overnight. There's 223, 2255, week on, week off. I'm not going to dive deep into what all those mean, but you can find that information in other videos on the channel. But that's the terms that the court thinks of it in. If you say week on, week off is best for my child because they're a little bit older, they can be away from each parent for that length of time. It gives us the ability to establish household routines in our homes. It gives us the ability to fully participate in all aspects of parenting. It creates a lot of stability for the child because there's not a lot of exchanges, right? And you have to choose plans that are age appropriate. Like a week on, week off, the court will generally want the child to be at least 10 most of the time before we're looking at that kind of thing. Parents can agree on that sooner, but if it's up to the court, they're usually not going to do it before that age. But when I'm talking about it in terms of that schedule, see, I'm not saying, well, I want week on, week off because it's fair, because it's equal. Because again, those things go back to how it impacts you and mom. That's not the question. The question is, what does it do for the kid? That's where you want to put your argument, okay? Not on fairness or equality. The second thing that I see is being too aggressive or too assertive. Okay, now let me just say that my late husband I used to tell him he was passive aggressive sometimes, and he would say, yeah, well, you're aggressive. And so I'm aggressive. Okay. You guys can probably tell I have a pretty strong personality. The way you see me on the video, my friends, my family, people will tell you, this is me. This is who I am. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm pretty straightforward. But we have to remember that when we're coming into this system, there is some male-female dynamic there that I think is often held against dads in my experience. And I don't want to say that the system is inherently biased against dads. I think it's getting better. I'm in California. Obviously, we're a 50-50 state. We're much more progressive than other states. I understand that. I grew up in Kentucky back east, not so progressive, more mom focused, right? So I get that there are still inherent biases in a lot of jurisdictions in kind of like those male female roles. And I think particularly with younger children. Again, I think we're getting better. I think we're getting more aware and we're more appreciative and more understanding of how important dad's role is for a child. And, I think children need both parents. They need moms and dads, ideally. Sometimes you have safety issues and reasons that can't happen. But on the whole, all things being equal, children need both parents. But I think what happens is dads that, particularly if you're the kind of dad that's very sort of in his masculine and very intense, maybe is a word that I like to use to describe my dad clients sometimes. And they just kind of present in that very matter of fact, kind of boom, boom, this is it kind of way, which again, I love. And I love that whole masculine thing and I appreciate it. But we're in a system where we're kind of in this day and age being taught gentle parenting and all these types of things. And so when you come across in sort of that very intense kind of dominating way, especially if you have somebody on their side that's accusing you of being controlling and all those types of, abusive, verbally abusive, all of these things, you want to dial back that intensity. And one of the key ways that I tell my dads to do this is to, when you're sitting in front of an expert like a therapist or a custody evaluator or a parenting coordinator or, attorney for the children or whatever that expert is, one of the ways that you can do this is by letting that person have control of the conversation, right? Just sort of not trying to go down the list of all the things you want to tell them, but sort of dialing back. And when they say, what is your main concern about mom's parenting? I feel like mom is a little overprotective and I'm concerned that may cause the child to not develop the level of independence that they really need to be able to be, to stand on their own 2 feet in the world, right? And so I gave the reason, right? But I also gave how that affects the child, which is very, very important. And I'm not just saying, oh, mom's too coddling. She babies them. I'm not making it about mom. I'm saying, well, mom can be overprotective. And here's my concern of how that might impact the child. And then you just stop, right? And you don't say anything else. And you wait. And that person, 9 times out of 10, when I have people do this, that expert comes back and says, can you give me an example of that? And then you go, well, sure. When I take the child to the swimming pool and they get close to the edge, a mom starts screaming for them to be, for me to grab them or pull them back or whatever. And I encourage them to jump off the edge and into my arms so that they learn to take calculated risk and they learn to overcome their fears and they learn to trust that I'm going to catch them, and it improves our bond and our relationship. Again, I'm giving child-focused reasons for what my example is, but I don't give that example right away. I let the other person have that control and let them ask for that example, just by way of the fact that that other person has to kind of pull that out of you and ask for the example, sort of creates the dynamic of you not being like, here's all the things mom does, right? Let me just go down the list. And it dials back that intensity, right? Because you're just relaxing, you're letting that other person have control and that type of thing. So then when mom comes in and she's like, oh, he's controlling, he's this, he's that, then that expert is going, that wasn't my experience of this person at all. Okay, so just being aware of that. And I'm not saying, again, not all dads have that, right? But if you're kind of a man's man and you really kind of stand in that masculine, again, which I love, I think is great. I'm not complaining about it from a woman perspective. I'm just telling you from a court perspective, that is something you have to be aware of and try to dial back. You have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to. That's so important. Let's say you sit down and you have minors counsel and it is a man and it is somebody that's very masculine like you and all that. They can probably handle your level of intensity, right? But if you have a young female, newly out of school, just learning about therapy, whatever, she's not going to be able to handle it as well. She's going to see you as overpowering, intense, all those things. So knowing your audience ahead of time and knowing who you're dealing with is important. The third thing is kind of tied in with the second thing, but pushing your agenda. Men are very problem solving, right? It's one of the things that we love about you is that we got a problem, we can come. You are all about coming up with all the different ways that we can solve that problem. And that particular aspect is good when you're dealing with this and you can throw out multiple options of, hey, let's brainstorm. How could we solve this problem? But when you have the list of, okay, here's the problem, here's the solution. Here's this problem, here's the solution. Here's this problem, here's the solution. And then you're like, okay, we need to move. We need to get this done and push all these things through. Then you're trying to push your agenda, right? And a lot of times, the harder we try to push the agenda, the more it backfires on us. Again, I find if you can kind of sit back and let things unfold, then eventually, if mom is crazy and difficult, I see all kind borderline, bipolar, narcissistic, whatever it is. If you're dealing with a crazy chick, okay, on the other side, the best way to show that is to step back and let her be crazy. Let the spotlight shine on that crazy. And when you're in there and you're pushing your agenda and you're trying to make things happen, then it becomes, well, both of these people are engaging in the dance of conflict. And then both of you look bad. And so if, again, stepping back, not having that need to push your agenda and just letting things unfold in the natural course. I know it's hard to wait because you want things to happen now. You want time with your kids now. You want the divorce over now. You want to be done with all this now. But I am telling you, every time I see a client try to push things through and do that, normally they come out with the short end of the stick. And if you can just sit in the uncertainty and let things unfold, then normally what will happen is over time, different incidences will happen that will show that mom's interfering in your parenting or that she's withholding the child or whatever the things are that are happening. There's a great quote from Tony Robbins where he says, the quality of your life is in proportion to the amount of uncertainty that you can reasonably tolerate. And every year that I live, I find that to be more and more true. Learning to just let things happen and trust that the process is going to do what it should do and figure it out on the other side. But it's that fear that the experts or the court or whoever won't figure it out that drive us to push that agenda. Just state what you're observing, the behaviors, the actions, things you can witness with your five senses. The person said this, did this for her and the kids, whatever that is. And then let these experts piece together the reasoning of why it's happening, what the agenda is of mom, how it's impacting the kids, all of those things. That's the expert's job to piece all that together. Your job is to just give input on what you're observing in this process. I hope that's helpful to you. Of course, these are not the only three. There is all kinds of things that recur that I see that are the mistakes that dads make. So if you'd like more help sorting through those and maybe deciphering what your tendency is and which mistakes you're making, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page on my group coaching programs for dads, for moms as well, but you probably don't need that if you're watching this video. And also information on my premium VIP one-on-one coaching services. If you're just in up to your eyeballs, you're at the very beginning of your case, you've got DVs, custody evals, all kinds of craziness going on, then those premium services are probably something that would be very, very supportive of you. So thanks for joining me. I will see you guys next time.